Hi everybody, I'm Jackson Jones and welcome to the Biker Bar's first webinar. There are a whole lot more webinars to come, so check out the Biker Bar website and subscribe to the monthly newsletters so that you don't miss any live events. Now today's webinar is with the girl on a bike herself, Vanessa Ruck. In case you haven't heard about the girl on a bike previously, it is Vanessa's inspirational comeback story that all started in 2014 and continues to this day. So stick around as I introduce Vanessa Ruck.
Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It's awesome to see you all. I just need to get permission back for screen sharing and then I will get my slides up and we can crack on. But basically, as Jackson has kindly introduced, I am Vanessa Ruck, also known as the girl on a bike. And I'm here today to talk to you about really the journey that I've been on through life that's brought me to where I am today. So I would describe myself as a motorcycle rider, racer and adventurer, and I'm very much addicted to life on two wheels. But I haven't actually always been a motorcycle rider. It's something that has become a passion for mine in more recent years, following a pretty life-changing moment that happened a few years ago. Now, I'm pretty proud of some of the things that I've achieved in the last year or so, and so I thought I'd start by sharing some of those. So here are a selection of photos. The one in the middle of me is me on the finish line of Romaniacs, and that is a Red Bull event, kind of known as being one of the toughest hard enduro rallies in the world. There were probably 500-600 riders battling through some pretty gnarly terrain in Romania in the Carpathian Mountains, and me, one of 6 females, managed to make it to the finish line. It was brutal. I think the easiest way to describe it is where you stand there on 2 feet and look at the train ahead and go, I'm not really sure I could even walk through that. Then you put yourself on a motorcycle. I mean, it was pretty ridiculous. You can see like the mud and sweat all over me in that photo. I've also participated in some big rally desert events, and that is in Qatar with a desert Baja, and also Rallye de Maroc in Morocco. Now, the peak riding temperature in some of these desert dune landscapes was 45 degrees. I don't know about you, but I can't sit in a hot tub at 40 degrees for all that long before I start to get a headache. And you're riding a motorcycle following compass bearings and a piece of paper on your handlebars. Like, it was just ridiculous. There were dunes bigger than multiple story houses, and you're in the middle of them on your own with a motorbike, trying to make it to the finish line. Definitely challenged me, and I'm very pleased to say that I pushed through some fear, navigation issues, etc., and continued going. And I actually got a female trophy for Rallye de Maroc. And I kind of put it down to a little bit of a because I can mentality, that I'm sort of determined to get up each day and try to make the most of every day. Now, if you take that in its sort of instance, it makes it look like I have a very shiny, perfect, amazing life, and it's all pretty glamorous and fantastic. But that is part of the problem with social media. It's very easy to have quite a filtered perspective on what's going on, and a lot of channels out there on social media don't share the true reality of the battles that life has. And that was me not too long ago. And before I sort of get into the story as to how I ended up in a hospital bed, and in a hospital bed multiple times over and over again over several years, I thought it would be a good idea to go back in time a little bit to let you know what life was like for me before the accident that happened. Now, the only way I can really describe myself back then is as an adrenaline junkie. I lived, breathed, and did everything to push myself physically and mentally in extreme sports. So kite surfing was my main one. The top 2 photos, absolutely loved it. I was always trying to get out in the water. Weekends were kiting. If there was no wind, I'd mountain bike, rock climb, gym in my lunch break, at work 3 or 4 days, wakeboard after work, cycle to work on my commute every day. And you kind of get the idea where I was incredibly fit and very, very active. And if I could go back in time, I'd take a moment to really thank and appreciate that body, because it could do anything that I threw at it. And most importantly, it didn't hurt. because as I sit here talking to you today, I live and manage with chronic hip pain, and you know, what happened to me in the accident is something that really lives on with me every single day as I sit here. So what happened? It's 25th of March 2014, and it was a very normal Tuesday. I'd been in the office for the day, I've finished work, and I was actually on the way to the wakeboarding lake to meet my husband and some friends for an evening on the water. Got on my bicycle because I wasn't an active motorcycle rider back then. Got on my bicycle and I started pedaling away. I got about a mile down the road and the traffic light in front of me turned green, pedaling on. And then a car coming the other way decided not to stop at their red light, and they cut straight across in front of me, leaving me nowhere to go. And I went straight into the side of that car, and like that, life as I knew it changed. Now, I wasn't a bleeding mess on the side of the road. I wasn't scraped up by paramedics. I did go to hospital in an ambulance and was pretty shaken up. I'd just been hit by a car. I was discharged from hospital later that night with bruising. Now, if we fast forward 7 years, I've just had my 8-year anniversary from the accident, but really I sort of put it down to a 7-year recovery. If we go through those 7 years, I've now had 7 surgeries, including a reconstructed right shoulder and right hip. It's been a pretty brutal recovery process where it's almost worked out as 1 surgery a year every year for 7 years. And I sort of describe my recovery as being like a roller coaster, and not like a really fun roller coaster, more like the ups and the downs of a roller coaster, where I've had really deep downs, where I've been bedbound, in a lot of pain, stuck looking at the same annoying bit of paint on my bedroom ceiling, dependent on other people to look after me, help me. And then I've got a bit fitter, a bit more active. My rehab's been going and I've got a little bit more active. And that's where you're at the top of the roller coaster. And each time I'd realized that I just hurt and that my body wasn't okay and that things just weren't right. And I'd go back to the medical profession, and sure enough, something would have been missed and I'd need more surgery, and I'd be back down into the bottom of that roller coaster. And each time you go in for surgery, it doesn't get easier because you've done it before. If anything, it gets harder because it's just continuous. You feel like you're in this big, dark, black tunnel where you're never going to get out the other side. Now, the physical recovery has been brutal. 5 surgeries on my hip, 2 on my shoulder. But actually, if I'm honest with you, the mental recovery has actually been harder. I was diagnosed with multiple mental health disorders in the aftermath of the accident. One of them being fear of the road, which kind of makes sense, seeing I was hit by a car. It took a lot of processing and time to get through. And the other one was change disorder. So change disorder manifests in different ways in different people, but for me, it's all me no longer seeing myself as me. Vanessa was this strong, fit, capable person from before the accident. And she was fit. She could kite surf. She could do 3 sets of 13 pull-ups. And the broken, pathetic, painful body that I was in, it wasn't me. I didn't see it as me. I couldn't relate to it. And I actually talked about myself in the third person. Vanessa wasn't me. It was really confusing for other people because they'd be like, wait, what? Who's Vanessa? I thought you were Vanessa. And it actually got to the point where I realized that I really wasn't okay and I needed help. And so I'm really proud of myself for getting to the point where I accepted that and I got help. And I think for anyone struggling with anything, asking for help is a huge sign of strength. There's nothing weak about it. And I'm really proud of myself for getting help. And it certainly didn't happen overnight, but over time, I eventually got to a point, not necessarily where I will learn to love my body, but at least where I learned to accept it. Because acceptance of the situation that we are in is a huge first step in actually being able to cope, process, and try and move forward out of that situation. So I had to accept that, and then I could start to put the right energy, nurturing, nutrition, sleep care, physio, rehab into my body to try and help it move forwards. Something I love about these photos is the reoccurrence of my teddy bear, because no one is too old to have a teddy bear in some really lonely moments. He was there with me, giving me a cuddle, that's for sure. So I really want to try and emphasize here is that life just really isn't perfect, especially when you look at social media and you see people portraying all these filtered lives. I work very hard to try and be real, open, honest, sharing the ups and downs on my social media. But I just kind of want to emphasize that it's totally normal to have challenges and battles in life. It's not necessarily on the scale of being hit by a car, but smaller battles and challenges affect each and every one of us. And it's also normal to have days where you feel like you don't know how you're going to get through the day or the week, and have moments where you very much struggle and you can't see the way out. And something that I've realized through my recovery is that we almost have three mindsets of how we can approach the different situations and the challenges that we're going through life. And I've realized that these mindsets can actually be applied to pretty much everything that we're doing. So I thought I'd share those with us today. And the first one of those is denial. Now, denial really comes down to, actually, the easiest way to maybe try and describe this as we talk through this now is to relate it to lockdown, because I think a lot of us have experienced some form of lockdown with COVID over the last couple of years, and it sort of feels like a sort of synonym that we can kind of describe it to. So, we're stuck at home. Denial phase would be us being pretty angry. We're a bit pissed off. It's not fair. I want to go out. There's a lot of negative kind of annoyed, irritated, angry feelings going on inside. You kind of just mope about, don't really do too much, but you're pretty angry and bitter. And the struggle, I suppose, with the denial mindset is that you can stay in it indefinitely. You can go through life just kind of wishing stuff wasn't happening and feeling sorry for yourself and having a bit of self-pity. And I certainly had a fair amount of that, lying in my hospital bed, lying in bed at home, being angry at the driver, feeling sorry for myself, wishing it hadn't happened. So the next option is trying to think about a more of an endurance mindset. And if we go back to the lockdown scenario, endurance, I'm wondering how many people on this call maybe went on a Zoom call during lockdown, or maybe did an online quiz, or joined a choir online, something like that. They're really good examples of endurance, which is effectively trying to make the situation you're in just a little bit more comfortable, doing the bare minimum, trying to get by. For me, it was watching Netflix, maybe putting on some of my favorite country music and trying to make that time just a little bit easier in some way. Now, the trouble with the endurance mindset, again, is that you can stay in it indefinitely, but the likelihood is life will be a little bit harder, probably a lot less fun, and you're less likely to actually move forwards out of the situation that you're in. If I just moped about watching Netflix and feeling, a little bit of sorry for myself, I doubt I'd ever have got to where I am today, that's for sure, with my rehabilitation. So third mindset is an overcome mindset. And this is all about trying to take control of your situation and looking for what you can do to become a better version of yourself, how you can grow, how you can move yourself forwards and out of the situation to come out the other side, to get stronger and more skilled, all those sorts of things. So you're probably now thinking, oh, come on, smarty, how do you get out of lockdown? No, I haven't got a way out of lockdown, because a lot of the time in life, the situations that we're in are outside of our control. And lockdown is a great example of that. I couldn't just make lockdown disappear. But what could you do in lockdown to try and become a better version of yourself? So I'll give you a little bit of an example of something that I did in lockdown. It sounds weird, but bear with me. I went out to the garage, I got my enduro bike out, I took the wheel off, took the tire off, changed it, put it back on. And I did it again. On and off, on and off, on and off. And I practiced. And I got to the point that I could change the tire on my enduro bike in 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Now, I can't hear you because we're on a webinar, but that's when you're meant to be like, whoa, that's really fast. It is actually quite fast, and it was a bit weird spending time just doing that in my garage. But when I then got to a point where I could leave lockdown and go back to a race environment, it was a really good skill to have, because now a job that used to be something that was really painful, and the amount of curse words, the amount of bruised knuckles I would have, is now a job that I can do actually with a bit of enjoyment and pretty quickly, which helps me out. So in that scenario where I was stuck at home, I used a mindset of how can I use this time to grow, to become better skilled. And if I think back to when I was stuck at bed at home following hip surgery, my overcome mindset was about going, right, what do I have in my control? I can do my physio. And if I don't do my physio, I'm not going to get stronger. I'm not going to get fitter. I'm not going to be able to get out of this bed and walk to the toilet on my own unless I start to actually try and do what I have in my control. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I am always in an overcome mindset, because I'm not. It's totally natural to have peaks in energy and motivation, in drive. Having a bad night's sleep, for example, can hinder our energy in the day. And so I have certainly switched between the three different mindsets, but it's about trying to be more conscious about which mindset you're in and take control of that situation to push yourself through to a overcome mindset. Now, when I made this slide, what I didn't think about is the fact that actually you can eat all three color apples. So red apples are actually really nice too, but for the sake of the visualization of the slide, we're going to just go with the fact that we should eat the green apple and try and drive our own change and get to the green apple. Now, I'm not going to go into the full detail about how I got into motorcycles following the accident, because it's actually sort of a bit of a story, I suppose, but a key moment was when I was higher in the roller coaster. Obviously, I was a little bit more active. Over the 7 years, there were months and months, years where I've not been able to ride a motorcycle. And I had a discovery of my husband that a Harley Davidson was a really good opportunity for my mental health, because at a time where I wasn't able to do a lot of what I really wanted to be doing, my kite surfing, my friendship circles, the sports, I didn't really see the point of much. But the Harley, wind in the hair, bit of adrenaline, some adventure, without needing to be physically fit. And that was a really big change that we had in our life. Now, this photo here was an evening that I will never ever forget. It was the first proper adventure that my husband and I went on our Harley. So that's Doug, my Dinah Street Bob. I still have her today. And we went about 6 miles from the house, because that's all I could handle with my body. But I was out of the house. I wasn't staring at that same ceiling. And it was incredible. Had a little campfire. We had a barbecue. I'm eating courgette there, but I promise you we had some steak as well. There is actually a bottle of wine in the grass, but because I often speak to school kids, I've actually had to get rid of the bottle of wine. But it was a really lovely evening. Now, for Vanessa pre-accident, this would have been the most lame Friday night possibly. What, like sat in a field with some steak? But for where I was in my recovery, it was absolutely incredible, and was very much an awakening of a new sense of gratitude. Like, while I wasn't able to do what I really wanted to be doing, you know what? I still had things to be grateful for. Just the fact that I was alive, the fact that I was able to spend time with my best friend. And when I then went back into more surgeries, I think I've had 4 surgeries since this photo was taken. And I then had a lot more appreciation and strength to find gratitude in those moments lying in bed when I was in a lot of pain and in a far darker place mentally. Sounds like my husband just set the fire alarm off. Sorry about that. He's turned it off, which means the house isn't actually burning down. That's good. So finding gratitude in the moment, like the fact that I could hear the birds singing outside, the fact that I could call my mum or a friend and have a chat, the feeling of fresh bed sheets, and that feeling on your feet, all kinds of little things that could put a smile on my face. And that was an incredible ability to be able to try and keep my spirits up through some of the considerably more difficult times as I faced more and more rehabilitation and surgeries. Now, the question I always like to ask people is whether they could eat one of these whole. So that's an elephant for anyone who's not too familiar. It's pretty huge. And I always enjoy it when I'm speaking to school kids, because there's always the little cocky one who's like, yeah, I could eat an elephant whole. And you're like, really? Optimistic eaters going on there. So this actually has a purpose, and it's talking about goals. Now, I've sort of mentioned the Harley Davidson that I was riding. We did sort of 20,000 miles around Europe over those following years on holidays and trips with my husband, riding down to Croatia, probably about 15 countries. But a lot of people then wonder, well, how does the sweat, the mud, the enduro, rally, etc., come into all of this? And that's a very good question. And this is where I came up with that idea. It was actually a couple of days after this photo was taken. I was back home. And I woke up in the morning and I turned to my husband and I was like, can I get a dirt bike? And he was like, what? Like, look at you. What? Surround yourself with supportive people. That's all I can say. So he was supportive, and we went out and we got me a little dirt bike. That's Whiz. Now, it was 5 months until I could even sit on it. But in those moments where I was lying there in too much pain, I couldn't find the energy to do my rehab, to do my physio, that bike was sat there as a reminder, like, come on, Vanessa, you want to ride your dirt bike. But the problem was that a lot of the time when I sat there, not even be able to put my own socks on, the idea of getting on that dirt bike was just too big a thing, kind of like trying to eat an elephant whole. It was an amazing stretch goal, but in some of those tougher moments, I couldn't see how I needed to get there. And so that is where having some shorter term goals is really important to help you get there. So for me, it was making it to the toilet on my own, putting my own socks on, making it downstairs to have dinner and sit at the table. I felt like a proper adult. All those things that can drive you forwards. Now, when you're setting goals, it's really important to have big stretch ones and the stepping stones. They keep you motivated. They give you things to have little successes and quick wins that you've achieved things, and help you keep focused on moving forward. So if you don't have any goals set, I really encourage you to set some goals. And when you set your goals, you need to remember that you are the only one that can make them happen. Even if you're a billionaire footballer, there's no amount of money that can pay somebody else to strengthen your body, or to put the knowledge in your mind, or do the steps that you need to do. You have to put the work in. Now, there's always excuses. So one of these pictures, all of these pictures have a story, but the one in the middle at the top, that's me stood in my wetsuit going to the swimming pool, because after 5 hip surgeries, after all of them, I had to go to the pool 6 days a week for 20 minutes, walking up and down in the shallow end for 3 months. And that took a lot of energy, and it was freezing cold. So I decided, right, how do I get rid of my excuses, Vanessa? I know I'll wear my wetsuit. I got crazy looks at the pool, but I didn't care, because I was doing what I needed to do for my recovery and my goals. And so remember that you need to put the work in. You're also never alone. There's always other people that are going through similar struggles, and there's always people around you. You might feel alone, but actually there are friends, there are family, there are neighbors, there are clubs, forums, places online. There will be places in your community. There's always somewhere you can get support and help. So know that you need to do the work, but always remember to ask for help. Now, I'm not going to go into all of the different surgeries that I had, because you'll probably start to switch off or fall asleep or try to throw tomatoes at me through your computer screen. But I had quite a few, unfortunately, and they certainly didn't get easier each time. But every time I was back there, I was determined to try and keep that overcome mindset and work out how I was going to get on a bike again as soon as possible. So one of the things I did was I know, I'll try a different bike. And I got myself a little trials bike. So this is more about slow skill, control, technique, a lot lower risk than a bigger enduro bike. And so this is Bear, my Beta Evo 250. And basically, the first 2 months, once I was allowed medically, all I did was went out to the garage and stood on it. Super lame. But for my brain, I was on a motorbike and I was actually helping my rehab because I was balancing. And I got to the point where I could stationary stand on my bike for 15 minutes. That was my personal best. And once I was then able to ride it and actually turn the engine on, my balance was so much better. And to this day, that time actually helped my riding skill. But it was more about my mental health at the time, feeling like I was actually doing something, having bike time, even if I couldn't turn the engine on. Unfortunately, again, had to have more surgery. And I actually realized on my last birthday, it was the first birthday I've had in all the years since the accident where I haven't had a surgery in the last 12 months, which was a bit of a celebration. I've been told with a 95% certainty I will need more surgery, but I'm not going to let that slow me down. It's all about driving your own change. But something I've realized that kind of really does limit us in life is fear. Fear, stress, anxiety, they're all very similar kind of controlling factors inside us. And this is a moment of fear that I thought was quite a fun one to share with you. So you might not be able to see on your screen because of the size of it, but I've actually got my eyes shut in this photo and I'm having a full breakdown in my motorcycle helmet. So this was day 4 or day 3 of Red Bull Romaniacs. So I've been riding for about 5 hours at this point, and the finish line is about 100 meters in front of me. Yes, I realize I'm in a race. I shouldn't be stationary. That's the problem. What you can't see in the photo is what is between me and the finish line. And that is a terrifying man-made wall of death going over a river. And I saw it and went, no way. Am I going to go over that? I'm going to die. Certain death. All of the worst case things that were going through my head, there was no way I was going to do it. The crowd started cheering. Some people recognized me. Then the next thing, the crowd is shouting my name. I am freaking out. And I'm really proud of myself for working through that moment and doing it. And I made it successfully. There is actually a video of me going on this. If you check out my Instagram reels, there is a video of me going over this thing. Photos flatten everything. It's way more ridiculous than it looks in this picture. It was brutal. But what I kind of realized is that fear very often is actually just false expectations appearing real, which is kind of the easy way of simplifying that is that our brain looks at a scenario and goes, bah, worst case, what if that, what if this, and it starts absolutely picking everything apart and thinking of all the possible eventualities of what could happen. Now, if that ramp had exact same camber been made of a grassy bank, I guarantee I wouldn't have even looked at it. But because it was horrible and wooden and slippery and railings and flower pots and rivers, my brain worst case scenarioed all the possible things that could happen. I was going to fall in the water, I was going to drown my bike, I was going to break my arm on the railing, I was going to hit the wall, the crowd were going to laugh at me. All I actually needed to do was stand up on my pegs, look ahead, gentle throttle, steady momentum, and ride over it. My brain made it out to be so much worse. Every time I went into a medical appointment, what if they need to cut my leg off? What if they can't fix me? What if I'll never be able to walk again? What if I live in constant pain? Okay, well that one has come true. But all of these worst case scenarios, what you actually need to do when you get in a scenario of stress, anxiety, fear, is take a step back, take a really deep breath and think about what is the actual facts of the situation right now? What am I actually dealing with? And it's incredible how much clarity and more control of the situation you have when you focus on the actual intelligence of the situation that you're in. And it's quite a powerful tool. So hopefully next time you have a little bit of a fear, you might think about that. Like, I don't know, think about being scared of spiders. When you actually break it down, apart from if you're in Australia where the spiders can probably kill you, a lot of the other places in the world, the spiders are, what are they actually going to do? Crawl on you? Why are we scared of them? They're not, if you actually look at the facts, there's nothing scary about them. that was a side thing, probably not ideal. With there's probably some people in Australia on here, but so be careful of spiders if you're in Australia. Anyway, I really like this photo on the right. That's a good example of me on an off-road motorcycle. Not the fact I'm falling off. Yes, I fall off all the time, but it's more the fact that I put my right leg down and my hip will go, nah, sorry, love, you're going down. And you know what? It's okay. I'll fall over. I'll get back up again. I'm not going to let my past and the body that I'm living in now stop me trying to get out there and give it my all and be determined to improve my skills, to try and compensate maybe for some of my reconstructed bodiness and get out there. Now, this road is a road that I really enjoy because it's actually really fun on a motorbike. It's Stelvio in the Alps, but actually because I think it really reminds me of life. You're going along, you're doing your thing, you're going to work, you're seeing your friends, you're having good relationships, and then boom, something happens and you're going in a totally different direction in life. Hit by a car, COVID, lockdown, lose your job, all kinds of different things. And then suddenly you're readapting, you're adjusting, going along again in another direction. And actually all the way through life isn't a smooth road and a smooth journey. It has all kinds of bends and twists. And I just think this road really visualizes that for me. And I think if you can try and overcome your fears, set some really good goals, have a little bit more gratitude, and really work to try and have that overcome mindset as much as possible, I think it's really incredible what you can do in life, asking for help and just really remembering that life is a journey. And it's totally normal to have battles, struggles, and days where you don't know how you're going to get through it. You're not alone when you're having that. Now, if you find me on social media, you will often see me looking like this. So that's pretty much me covered in sweat and mud. For some reason, the mud gravitates to my face. I'm not really sure why, but I'm not going to worry about that. It's all about sharing the ups and downs and the real realities of life for me. I share it when I'm having, nervous breakdown at the start of a rally in Qatar. If you head out to my YouTube channel, you can see that little breakdown for real out in Qatar. And the down days, the days where I'm hurting, I share everything because life is about being real, honest and open. And I hope that some of my energy might help somebody else dealing with the challenges that they're going through. So it's kind of been a little bit of a whistle-stop tour through some of the key things that I've learned from my recovery. But I think if I was to try and wrap it up with a key piece of advice, it would be the same advice I'd give to myself if I could go back to just after the accident. And that is to believe in yourself. And to every single person watching this, hand on my heart, I believe in you. And I honestly think you are capable of incredible things. You've just got to put your mind to it, do the work, be dedicated, find some appreciation and happiness in what you've got around you, and just try and make the most of every day. Just believe in yourself. And I really hope that you've enjoyed listening to some of my story. There's so many different arms to my story, and I really appreciate you joining today to hear some of it. You can, of course, find me on social media as The Girl on a Bike. I'm Vanessa Ruck. I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok. Well, I feel like a granny on TikTok, but I'm doing my best. And also I've got my website, and there's a whole load of information and more details about my accident story, some of the trips and events I've been on there. And yeah, thank you. I would love to know if anyone has any questions, and we can go into some question times now if anyone does.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, I encourage anyone to, as Vanessa said, ask any questions that you have. Vanessa, I've got a few. Now, you mentioned the deny and the endure and the overcome mindsets. Was the transition to each of these mindsets light bulb moments, or did they just happen organically? Did you know that they were happening?
I think the naming of those mindsets has been something that I've figured out in more recent times. I don't think when I was lying there in my hospital bed, I I don't think I was fortunate enough to be aware of that, which is why I'm trying to share it so that other people can be a little bit more conscious of those mindsets.
Sure.
And I'll be honest with you that even now I still have moments where the pain gets a little bit over the top of me, or I'm lying in bed in the morning and I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. I still I think it's quite fluid sometimes between those energies. I just think the key thing is trying to be more conscious of our energies and our attitude. Even our body language is a really good sort of sign of the situation they're in. You know, if you're sat in a meeting and you're like all slumped and fed up and bored, it's probably a bit of a sign of the sort of energy that you're putting out, and probably how you're processing your things in your head.
Obviously, you put yourself in situations that are out of your comfort zone that you may not have tried before. So
Yeah.
how do you maintain that overcome mindset when you're falling off your bike, or that obstacle didn't play out like you thought it was going to?
I think stepping back a tiny bit from that question, as far as like in the key moment of falling off my bike, I think in general, I've realized that if I don't get enough sleep, I don't eat well, and I'm not surrounding myself with kind, supportive people that give out good energy, they're probably three of the biggest things that reduce my ability to get up and like try and drive life. If I'm tired, I'm useless. If I'm hungry, I'm hangry, you know, like these are just things that I know kind of need to look after my foundation. For me personally, I very much add my pain level in there, and being aware of that. Sometimes my husband is quicker at noticing when I like, do you need to take some painkillers, before I even notice it. He's just so good at kind of getting my energy. So I kind of add that in. If there's anyone listening that does deal with pain, it's an important one to try and maintain as well. Painkillers are your best friend and your worst enemy though. When it comes to scenarios like in let's say in Qatar, lost in the desert, there was a moment where I didn't have a clue where I was in sand dunes, and you know, actually it was quite scary. But the reality is I'd chosen to be there. I trained as best I could to be there, and the only way out of that scenario was trying to figure it out. I didn't want to hit the alarm button on my bike and get a helicopter in. Like, I wasn't going to admit that defeat. I'd come so far. I wanted to keep going. And I think that's where you set goals that are really important to you. My goal was to try and make the finish line. And I was pretty determined that I was going to do everything in my power to make that happen. And I know that in that race, I think about 45% of us made the finish line. It was pretty brutal. It was really hard navigation, and it was disgustingly hot. And there's an element of, when you go through really tough situations and you do put yourself outside your comfort zone, when you then come out the other side, the element of satisfaction and just like the buzz you get from that is so huge. You only need to do that once to then be like, oh, that was good. It was brutal. I hated that bit, but the bit afterwards felt amazing. That it's almost like some kind of endorphin legal drug that you just kind of want more, because actually the only way to grow is by putting yourself outside your comfort zone.
You had a motorcycle and everything before the accident, right?
So when I was 20, I was living on a remote island in the Bahamas doing a work placement for my undergraduate degree. This is all a true story. And I couldn't afford a car, so I got a motorbike, and I just kind of buzzed around the island on it for my time there. Came back to the UK, got my direct access license because I figured I probably should have that. And then I didn't have a bike again. I didn't see myself as a biker. I didn't get it. I certainly wasn't skilled in any way. And it was until after the accident where I was very much struggling with my commute into central Oxford. Again, I was at a slightly higher point in the roller coaster. And I thought, why don't I get a motorbike? What I didn't think about was the fact that I'd actually been diagnosed with fear of the road and what getting on a motorbike meant. But I was determined not to let the driver that hit me take even more away from me. That was something I had to work through. And then what I really didn't know about motorbikes is that they breed. Like, you have one, and then you want another one, and that one you want, why didn't I get one? And then suddenly you're like, got a few motorbikes.
Do you find that motorcycles in particular a lot of people describe motorcycles as something that can give you a lot of freedom and sort of get you to focus on the challenge at hand, whether you're commuting or whether you're taking on a challenge like the Red Bull Romaniacs or whatever. Do you find that in particular was something that's helped your recovery because you've had to focus on something, because you've actually come a long way from someone who's occasionally ridden a motorcycle to doing the kinds of things you're doing now?
Yeah, I think on the earliest times, there was a huge element of when you're riding a bike, you don't have capacity for much else. You're focusing on the train, the traffic, what's going on around you, the clutch, the gears. Like, you're so focused. Once you then go off road, it's next level of that concentration just to stay upright and keep going. You don't have capacity for anything else. So I didn't have the capacity really to be thinking about my pain, to be focusing on what was going on with anything else in my life. It was just like, I'm riding the bike now, kind of energy. And I think that was a huge part of like the mental therapy of it. And I know that when I had days in the office that were like tough days, you get on your motorbike, and by the time you've pulled up at your house, what happened in the office is so far behind because of just the experience you get being in the elements. And there's just something so uplifting and mind clearing about riding a motorcycle.
Yeah, agreed. We've got a question here from Paul, who asks, do you live in Wales? And if so, has this had any bearing to your recovery and journey into enduro riding?
So I only moved to Wales. Oh, have I disappeared?
No, you're still there, just not sharing the screen.
Okay. Yeah. That was weird. Sorry. I don't know what it is. There we go. So I only moved to Wales at the middle of last summer, and it was hugely a lifestyle thing. Partly my husband job moving this way as well. My family's all this way. I think COVID made us realize that when your family are 3-4 hours across the country, they might as well be in another country. They're now all sort of 20 minutes away, which is just amazing. Family experiences, friendships, that's just what makes me happy. And where we are now is lifestyle. We can mountain bike. I've now got an e-mountain bike, which means I can actually get back out riding again, which is huge. You've got great roads for riding. You can go rock climbing, paddleboarding. It's just beautiful. So it's just a slower pace of life, which I really enjoy, although faster because you're doing more sports.
Paul's asked, does your husband ride enduro too?
He sure does. Yeah, we're one of those like slightly vomit-worthy two peas in a pod kind of couples throughout our relationship. We've been together 12 and a bit years now, and we both kite surf, we both snowboard, rock climb, snow kite, mountain bike. I mean, we're all into all the same sports. And so we started off-road riding together, and he unfortunately was able to carry on riding while I had more surgery, so he got better than me. He's also bigger, has those things that give him a bit more like strength and courage, so I give him a bit of a run for his money, but he's a really good rider.
Does he compete in all the same events as you?
We both did Romaniacs, all of the UK based stuff we both do. The bigger rally stuff he's not really so interested in, so I sadly leave him here and I disappear off, and he gets to watch a little GPS dot going around the desert, which is actually horrible. So my best friend Emma Wolstenholme attempted to row solo across the Atlantic to try and break the female world record. a couple of months ago. And it was my first experience of watching a GPS dot on a map. And I was just like 15 times a day, I was just checking that her dot was just still there somewhere in the Atlantic. And it was horrible. And yeah, it's given me a bit more appreciation for what I put my husband through when I'm in the desert. I'm off to Tunisia for a rally in 3 weeks. So he's going to have do it again. Sorry, husband.
Have you been able to rope in some friends to join you on these events that you can't make it to?
Not the big ones. The challenge is I scrape together every penny I possibly can to be able to do these big rallies. They're not the cheapest, and so it's a difficult one to try and get lots of people to sort of join in on.
Paul's asked another question. Did he finish the Romaniacs, and are you very competitive when riding together?
Healthy competitive. Yes, he did finish Romaniacs as well. So I would say we're brilliant, because a lot of the time it totally shifts between who it is that does it. But one of us will be like, yeah, I'll try that hill climb. And then the other one's like, sorry, excuse me. Now I've got to try it because he tried it, or now I've got to try it because she tried it, which is actually like a really nice energy, because sometimes he'll be feeling a little bit more adventurous than me, or sometimes I will be, and then the other one's like, well, come on then, let's do it, which is actually really nice. So we are competitive in a very healthy way. Like, we wouldn't run over each other's heads to try and beat the other one. That would be bad.
So that's interesting, because you both, well, you had an active lifestyle before the accident, and obviously your husband had you shared that activity. How important is it to have someone by your side that shares that drive with you?
I have a lot of friends who in their relationships, they don't share all the same hobbies, and they disappear off and they do their own things, and then they come back together. I feel very grateful that we can really share our lives and do all these things together. And it means even just things like finances, we're not battling to try and be like, oh, but I want to buy a bike, oh, but I want to buy a horse, whatever it is. Like, we're on the same page, which I think helps. When it comes to recovery post the accident, I don't know how I got lucky enough to have such an incredible man by my side, because he actually turned around to me one day. I was trying to persuade him he should go kite surfing, and because I couldn't. And I wanted to go kite surfing, but I couldn't, so he could. And he was just like, why would I want to go kite surfing without my soulmate? It would be fun. Let's do something that you can do. And he stuck by my side through everything, basically. And so when we got the Harleys, that was huge, because obviously there was still loads of time where I couldn't even ride that. We then sort of played in the garage, and there were times where I just sit on a deck chair in a garage with a blanket and hot water bottle just to be out there with him. I couldn't even span her on my bike, but I was there, and we've just adapted, and he's been there right with me, which has been incredible. I don't know how I managed to get so lucky to have such an amazing soulmate and best friend, really. He's a keeper.
Vanessa, I appreciate that you've taken the time to come and talk to us about your story, and I encourage everyone to go and take a look at Vanessa's social media, The Girl on a Bike. It's an awesome story, and she's very active on social media, so you can always follow her journeys and her adventures, and there's some amazing adventures. I really encourage everyone to go and take a look at that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure, especially because I think it's really early where you are, because you're actually in Australia where the spiders can kill you, right?
Yeah, we got plenty of those, and snakes and all those kinds of things. All right, Vanessa, thanks again. I appreciate you taking your time, and I look forward to following your adventures.
Thanks so much.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.